Welcome to We Make Children's Books, a podcast that takes us through the imaginative minds of children's book authors and artists. I'm your host, Barney Smith of Storycomic.com, and in today's episode, we're excited to have with us the internationally acclaimed children's book author, Lynn McAllister. Lynn, thank you for joining us.
Hello, Barney. I'm really pleased to be here.
Yeah. And so you're here. You've had a really successful children's book that you launched called Pixie Van Dimple and the Wrong Kind of Artificial Intelligence. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're also going to talk about some new upcoming Pixie Van Dimple adventures that we might expect. Before we kind of jump in right away, do you want to first give our listeners and our viewers kind of a background how you got into writing children's books?
It was completely by accident. I think quite a few people get into it by accident. I didn't consciously think to myself, I'm going to be an author. Well, my father died in 2017, and I always say I had a bit of a creative rush to the head at that time, because I was laid up with having had a foot operation as well in the summer of that year, and I thought I'd try and do something with the time. So I quite like art. I had this. I was almost compelled to write the story about, and it's a rhyming prose, so it's almost like a poem. So I wrote something called Pixie Van Dimple and the Wrong Kind of Wind, which you might wonder what that's about, in fact. And it's about eating too much sugar and the consequences of eating too much sugar. Anyway, so I'd written that, and then sometime after that, I then started writing. It didn't take me very long. I sat with my iPad and just sort of and Rhyme Zone and produced this thing, and I thought, well, that's all right. It could be a book. So I then started to think about how I could make it into a book, but I had no idea about how to do it, where to start, who to go to, or anything. So I then sort of looked around, you search on the internet, how do I produce a book? And various sort of literary agents type searches and things like that. I spoke to people that I knew that may know about something to do with books and how to produce them, where to go, and just sort of put the feelers out there. But I looked at sending the actual text off to literary agents and publishers, and it takes such a long time to get a book out there if you're going that route, because you have to be accepted and then you have to go around get the whole thing produced. So the fastest route for me was to go but you could actually do it you could self-publish, which is fairly swift, but I chose to go with Austin Macaulay. And they're a hybrid version of a publisher, because they do publish and they do help you with marketing, but they actually you kind of pay some money towards the production costs, which you might say, yes, okay, why do you do that? Well, you do that because you would have to pay for an illustrator anyway if you had a picture book. So right. I'm thinking that it's a quite a good idea to get the actual illustrations done by a professional, because otherwise the quality might not be so good. Right. So it's not. I didn't have a conscious thought about it, but I'm really enjoying it because it's creative, and suddenly when you get creative, you get even more creative, and you have more ideas and bouncing off the walls kind of thing. Right. I guess with children, we're working with children as well. It does sort of give you more incentive, because it has an impact on their lives that you want them to enjoy it, and it's fun. It's
kind of an inspiration. You have a 12 and a 14-year-old daughters, correct?
That was the inspiration. I think they were quite young. They were younger when I started it, but they were also kind of addicted to their phones in a way. And I thought, oh, they're just all the time. I'm sure parents all over the land are thinking they spend quite a bit of time on their phones, and they just do. And so I decided that I was going to write about it.
And,
And that's where the idea came. The idea came from that, but the title itself has come from Pixie is kind of like a cute name kind of thing, but the Van Dimple name came from what I understand to be with dimples, because I've got dimples and my brother and sister have dimples, and we all were as children commented on continuously about our dimples.
it's a really strong kind of children's book-esque protagonist name, Pixie Van Dimple. It just definitely does flow.
Yes, she's definitely a strong character. Yeah, I think my girls are strong characters too, so they are the inspiration. The younger ones are very determined and very switched on, and does spend a lot of time on her phone. But then I have noticed the difference between them. One's being 16. We were talking the other day about the fact that when she was born, there were no smartphones around. So things have progressed quite quickly since then, in terms of technology, which is another thing that I tend to sort of try and keep up with a little bit on LinkedIn, looking at information on where we are with the online safety and all that kind of thing.
Pixie Van Dimple, part of this, you have the Internet Safety Pledge. Was that something that yes, you kind of created based off of the book, or is that something that was part and parcel of something else?
I started to think, because the book is essentially about screen time. She doesn't just spend time on her phone. She's doing things on her phone. She might be chatting to her friends. She might be online. She might be playing games or shopping, looking at clothes.
So give us a synopsis of what the book is about.
Okay, the synopsis on the back is introducing 12-year-old Pixie Van Dimple, the centre of all the drama, the protagonist and heroine. She's a typical girl, goes to school, hangs out with her friends in the park, has sleepovers, loves shopping and is always hungry. She also loves her phone, the linchpin of her world. Everyone has one and they're all connected. All is not well in smartphone world, though, as there are many dangers. She has been warned. What is the fuss about? Well, she will soon find out, and it is truly disturbing. And now we're all truly disturbed.
So how did you go from working on Pixie Van Dimple and the Wrong Kind of Wind to Pixie Van Dimple and the Wrong Kind of Artificial Intelligence?
The one about wind is quite short, so I thought I sent them both, and then they liked the one about artificial intelligence, and I understand why. It's because it's quite current,
right?
It's quite techie, and it's about mobile phones, smartphones, so it's very current, probably more of interest and more commercial interest right now, because they're around now. They're not going to go anywhere. In fact, technology is just going to get more advanced as we go along.
Your ideas of that, it was kind of timely because your daughters were on the same age at that point. Is she going to consistently be at that 12 to 14 year age, even though your daughters, who is your inspiration, are going to grow older, or are you going to have Pixie grow older with your daughters?
At the moment, Pixie will stay as that 12-year-old child. I mean, I haven't thought about her growing up. There may be a way of making her older, but because it's for children, the children's books, the theme would have to be around that. The aiming. We're aiming at a certain age group, which is sort of 8 to 12 or 8 to 13, because of the subject matter. And the subject matter does have a theme, because it is about the one about sugar consumption, which could then develop into food consumption, and there are issues in terms of food and what we eat and healthy eating with children, and we really want to be aiming all this at younger children that are growing up and going to be developing habits. So and also the thought behind the mobile phones and the smartphones is that children probably typically will be accessing phones at that age group. If not,
Right.
they'll probably have them given to them to use when they're younger as to play games on or whatever. And that's with parental controls and all those sort of controls in place. I was going on to say, and during this interview, that I've become part of a great big book club under the wing of Sue Atkins, who is a parenting expert, and she's quite experienced within the media. So she and her and our book club we're all kind of looking after parents and children and giving advice, and all the books are sort of in that theme as well. So it makes me kind of my sort of like idea of carrying on with this whole Pixie Van Dimple idea is to come out with more ideas for children in this arena that we're in at the moment.
Are you fervently like have a like a notebook next to you just to see what are the issues that you see your children facing now, so you can kind of utilize that as points of reference for future stories?
Yeah, I do. I see. I mean, the issues they seem to have at the moment are they're friendship issues. We haven't got to the point of going out issues really, because they're not been old enough to go out. They go out with friends to local places, but and particularly with lockdown as well, we've not been anywhere. So, mainly it's I think mainly I worry about the things are to be the emotional side of things, because children are quite precocious now in terms of knowing things and knowing how to use technology, but they're not emotionally mature enough to deal with some of the issues that are coming out of it. So whilst I sort of observe what they do, they talk to me about some of the things that worry them, and they're mostly to do with their schoolwork or their friendship groups. But obviously it would develop into other things when they get a bit older. And then they're already sort of like testing the waters about what would you say if, say I wanted to go out and have an alcoholic drink, what would you think about that? And as a parent, you start to think, well, what do I say? I think the idea is not to impose sort of so many rules on them and not allow them to do anything, because that just means they're going to rebel.
Right.
So it's kind of talking to them about issues like that, explaining what the risks are, which is what you would do with a mobile. The whole smartphone issue is you're trying to convey what the issues and the risks are of being in an environment like an online environment, being outside, being with out in with friends wherever you are. Let's say if they went to the city, into London, you have to explain what the risks are of being out there. Look after each other, be together, always have your mobile phone, don't leave your friend on your own, that kind of thing. And don't sort of get involved with people that you don't know. And but the whole kind of book club that I'm involved in is there's so much information, and even for me, even for each other, that there's so much information in there about advice for parents on teenagers, on it starts from babies really and goes right up to teenagers. So it's really useful, and I'm finding it quite useful just to sort of dip into it and have a look, because nobody comes with no one has a baby and then has some kind of handbook that says what you have to do.
You have to write a book that your audience, which is that 8 to 13-year-old, want to read, but you also have to write a book that has a message that they have to hear at the same time. How does that balance work for you?
I'm hoping the interest is in the actual subject matter, so that it's about something they're interested in, which is smartphones. So I think because it's got a smartphone on the cover, it's kind of interesting because it's about that, and artificial intelligence is about could be about algorithms or the whole kind of technological sort of advancements that have come about. encompassed in that artificial intelligence label interests girls and boys. I'm hoping it's going to be attractive because a girl is the whole subject's about a girl being in this sort of environment. It means it's attractive to both girls and boys because boys like tech, girls like the look of this book and the phones. If you read the book and you think, will everyone understand what it's about? I'm hoping that they do understand. They will understand what it's about. Some of the words they might not know, but I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that it's good to be able to kind of read something and not quite know what a word means, because you then go and look it up and you can know some more words. So it increases your vocabulary.
What's your process like? Were you a person that kind of long form write it out with how did you kind of separate out your day?
It took me about 3 or 4 nights to write those books. I might sat up quite late doing it, but I found myself getting on quite a roll with it because it's rhythmic because it's rhyming.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just seem to come into my head.
Yeah.
So you don't stop until you've got sort of a fair way through it, because then you have to regain that momentum the next time. I guess if you're writing a book that's got chapters or is longer and more complex, there may be other strategies that you could use.
When you got the book written out, and then you said you kind of reached out to find some publishers, did you interact in the sense that's like, all right, did they come up with a contract, or did you say, hey, well, this is something, especially when you're working on, more in the series, how much freedom or leeway did you have in the negotiation process when you had a contract written up?
I was sent a contract by Austin McCauley. It was probably just their standard contract, and I didn't know really what I was expecting because I'd never had one before. But I kind of searched around, asked a few people, and thought, well, it sounds like an okay contract, in terms of percentages and things that you might be receiving in royalties. And so I just went for it. I thought, well, I'll just go for it because what have I got to lose? Either don't do a book or I do a book. And I wasn't really sort of aware of other means of putting a book together, producing a book at that time. So and I was when the book actually arrived, I was quite pleased with it. I think it looks quite good, and the actual quality is very good. So that just gives you confidence that you could go with them again.
Did like have an option to like reach out to like similar authors that worked with Austin McCauley publishers to say, hey, how did they treat you and things like that?
I didn't know any at the time. I do know some now because there's some in our book club, and we're all quite pleased with our books. I think where some of it doesn't work is the marketing. I think things have advanced quite a lot in terms of an online online presence for a lot of companies. So, and also bookshops, they weren't open, so the only way of buying a book was online. So there are quite a few online platforms, and you can sort of get your book into any kind of format now, can't you? You can produce one yourself and make it into an ebook or an audio book. Ebooks can go on Kindle and all sorts of other. I think you might find Pixie Van Dimple on online platforms such as Waterstones, Barnes and Noble, Blackwell, Apple Books, audio books, Walmart, Foyles, Powell's, I never heard of even, because I looked it up today. If you look it up on Google, you'd find it everywhere. So it's definitely changed with being in lockdown. Things have definitely gone online, and businesses have had to survive by being online so that people can still buy the books. But it does fall down a little bit on the marketing because I guess the first 6 months of when the book came out, which was right at the start of the lockdown period, I didn't know what to do. I was going on social media and posting things, but I didn't really know anything about SEO. And I don't know if you know about SEO. which is
search engine optimizations. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And trying to, you have to keep posting in order to maximize that with all the social media. So I have got quite a lot of social media accounts set up on Twitter and Facebook and Pinterest and TikTok, and learning all about those things is quite it's a long process to learn all about how it all works. But thankfully, somebody in our group knows how it works and keeps telling us what to do. So it's tricky, and it's a very slow. It's almost like setting up another business. You need to put a lot of work in at the beginning to get the results at the end. And we're still, I would say, with writing. I don't really know if many people on the whole the market is so flooded with books. You've just got to you've got to keep trying and keep plugging at it to get noticed, and that's what I've been doing. So hopefully it will make a difference. And being within a group like we have, and a platform that we have to sort of promote our books on, does help.
Did you want to talk a little bit about your upcoming Pixie Van Dimple book?
Yeah.
Okay.
The next one, the one that's coming out next, is currently in production with Austin Macaulay, and it's going to be called Pixie Van Dimple and the Wrong Kind of Plastic. And which is going to be, it is about plastic pollution in the sea, in the ocean. So it's about ocean plastic, really. Pixie Van Dimple and Wrong Kind of Plastic. It's the same kind of scenario. Pixie Van Dimple gets involved in an issue, a problem that she causes by mistake, and some terrible things happen, and then you never know if she's going to make it or not. But she realizes that she has to think about what she's doing, and maybe go and raise awareness about that particular issue. That's what the stories are about. It's and any future stories will be the similar kind of thing, where it's Pixie Van Dimple is involved in some kind of issue, and then starts to campaign to make things better. So the whole kind of sustainable plastic pollution theme is huge at the moment.
Right.
Like I was saying at the beginning, it's I think everyone's talking about it. We've got various governments and world leaders talking about it. We've had Greta Thunberg talking about climate change, and David Attenborough talking about it. Everyone's talking about it, about one thing or another to do with climate change, plastic pollution, carbon footprint, sustainable growth, circular economy, food waste. Food waste is a huge issue, and an overconsumption in some places.
When you wrote this out, the draft for this book, did you always try to add in certain types of Easter eggs or something for people who read the first book? Anything in there that you've requested the illustrator to put something in the background or anything like that?
Pixie sort of in the story about plastic is eating the wrong kind of food. She's like eating junk food. When she absent-mindedly throws her rubbish in the wrong way, into the sea, it ends up in the sea.
Okay.
And then there's a mammoth sort of reaction. And I'm not going to tell you what it is, but it ends up being quite scary.
Find out. Okay. So you're looking at trying to get out one of these books like once a year now, or what's the?
It would be quite nice. It is quite exhausting. I think the whole if we get on the whole campaign thing with the marketing is takes so long, and we, as I say, with this group, we must have about 50 authors on this within our book club, within this platform, and quite a lot have got ideas about how to go about the marketing, but because we have to keep going with the marketing, it's quite
Right.
it's quite intense. I mean, you can probably keep churning out books. I'm hoping to keep churning out books. The actual time of the book production could be up to a year anyway. So you kind of, I could sort of, the creation of the book seems to be taking a bit of a back seat right now. It just seems to be more about the marketing strategies.
Because I did see like your Facebook, you have some people, you have fan art for Pixie Van Dimple. I saw that too.
Well, I read
Yeah.
it to my children at school.
Okay.
And that was because I could only read it to my children at school. I couldn't read it to anybody else's children at school because we were in lockdown. But the idea would be to read the book to children. And actually, I was transformed into Pixie Van Dimple for that.
Oh, really?
Yes, I was, and I was wearing Pixie Van Dimple outfit. So I was like, I think it was World Book Day.
Right.
I was reading it to the kids, and some of them drew pictures. So that was quite good. That meant they were engaged. So
Right.
I guess I go back to talking about children being engaged, because that's quite important to engage the children's sort of imagination, in order to for them to talk back to us about what they're thinking and how they're reacting to it. And they were quite interested to know how it all came about, who did the drawings,
Right.
and some of them did some of their own. So that's great.
Any idea of when the Wrong Kind of Plastic is going to be launching on Kickstarter?
I think I think that the lockdown did slow things down a bit with the production, because
Right.
like everybody else, all the illustrators went home. They probably all sat about in one office at one time, and they all went home. And then everything became quite disjointed. As you can imagine, we all felt disjointed from other people,
Right.
until we got up and running with Zoom calls and things like that. So it took ages, but I think they're now kind of progressing. They've made up a bit of time. I haven't seen anything yet, so it means that it's all going to happen hopefully over the summer. So I'm hoping it will be sort of autumn, maybe
Right.
September.
Okay.
I'm hoping.
Cool. Exciting stuff, Lynn. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much, Lynn. It was a pleasure chatting with you, and I look forward to talking to you again further.
Yes, thank you, Barney. It was really enjoyable. I'm sorry it kept cutting out.
Oh yeah, no, that's fine.